Okay, we're going to be starting to multiply two polynomials together. So if you see here, when we have a monomial, so one term, on the outside of a polynomial in parentheses, okay, the way we're going to do this is by distributing the negative 2x squared y to all three terms in the parentheses. So what I mean by that, you guys, I'm going to take the negative 2x squared y and multiply this to every single term in the parentheses. Now below, I've kind of told you how you multiply things together that have variables in them. So when we have terms that contain variables, the way that we multiply them together, we start by multiplying the coefficients, which coefficients are the numbers in front of the variables, such as negative 2, negative 3, or negative 4, or 5. All of those are coefficients. So you multiply the coefficients together, and then you add the variables' exponents on like variables together. So what I mean by that, when I multiply the negative 2x squared y to my first term, I can only add the exponents together if they are variables that are of the same type. So like I can't add the y's exponent to the x's exponent. When we add the variables' exponents, they must be on variables that are the same. Okay, so let's see how we do this. So I'm going to start with my 2x squared y, and I'm going to multiply that bad boy to my very first term. So the way we do this, I'm going to multiply my coefficients, which are my negative 2 and my negative 3. So negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. So this would be 6. Alright, I see these x's, so since x and x are the same variable, I'm going to add their exponents. So 2 plus 2 would give me x to the fourth. Alright, and lastly, y has nothing to combine to, so I'm just going to bring down my y. So that would be my very first term. Okay, we're going to do the same process to all the other terms. Now be careful. This is different than when we combine like terms. When you combine like terms, you do nothing to the exponents. Leave them alone. Okay, but when you multiply variables with exponents, you have to add the exponents, so be careful. Alright, let's multiply this to our next term. So I'm going to multiply my coefficients, which are negative 2 and negative 4. Negative 2 times negative 4, guess what, you guys, is positive 8. Alright, now I'm going to be adding the exponents on the x's together, which I don't see an exponent on x. So guess what, you guys? There's secretly a 1 hiding out in the midst, I guess. Alright, so I'm going to be adding these exponents together. So 2 plus 1 will give me 3. So this is x to the third, or x cubed. Alright, and then I have two y's to combine, which I don't see exponents on either of these variables. So secretly, there's a 1 hiding out. So I'm going to add these bad boys together. 1 plus 1 will give me y squared. Like so. So that would be my second term. And then lastly, I'm going to take my negative 2x squared y and multiply it to my final term, which is 5y squared. So negative 2 times 5 will give me a negative 10. Alright, I have nothing to combine x to. This term does not contain an x, so I'm just going to drop down my x squared like that. Alright, and then finally my y and my y squared, y to the first times y to the second, I add the exponents. So 1 plus 2 will give me y to the third. Alright, so after we multiply all the variables together and all the terms, the next thing is to try to combine any like terms you see, which like terms not only contain the same variables, but the variables must have the same exponents. So let's see if we even have any like terms. Okay, so this one has an x to the fourth y, so I'm trying to see if any other term has an x to the fourth y. No x to the fourth there, no x to the fourth there. So that one's good to go. Alright, this one, I'm looking for any term that contains an x cubed and a y squared. This one doesn't have an x cubed in it, and that one doesn't have an x cubed in it. Now, these two are very similar, you guys, but our exponents aren't exactly the same. So my x has a 3 here, but a 2 here. And my y has a 2 here, but a 3 here. So, they have to have the same exact variable and the same exact exponent on that variable. So, I cannot do anything else, so this is my final answer. Yay! Bam, this one is donezo, you guys. Alright, so I think we need to step it up a notch. What do you guys think? That one wasn't hard enough. Alright, so let's now talk about when we have a polynomial times a polynomial. So guys, it's the same process as before. Okay, we're still going to keep in mind this little trick right here. Multiplying the coefficients and adding the variables exponents together. Okay, but this time we're going to be basically distributing 2 times, not just once. So I'm going to start with my first term here and multiply it to all 3 terms. Then I'm going to take the second term and multiply it to all 3 terms again. So it's basically like we're doing this problem but 2 times. Are we ready? The harder the problem, the more exciting the problem. So get excited, you guys. Okay, so I'm going to start with my x squared, and I'm going to multiply it to all 3 terms in the second parenthesis. So I'm going to start by doing x squared times x squared. Okay, so remember when we multiply variables together, we add the exponents. So 2 plus 2 will give me an x to the 4th. Then I'm going to take x squared and multiply it to negative 11x. Okay, which this one, even though I don't see a coefficient, secretly there's a 1 hiding out. So 1 times negative 11, I'm going to multiply my coefficients together, which will give me a negative 11. And x to the second times x, remember, there is secretly a 1 hiding out. So 2 plus 1 gives me an x to the third. And then x squared times 6. Okay, I'm going to multiply my coefficients together. So 1 times 6 gives me a 6. And I don't have an x to combine to, so I'm just going to drop down my x squared. Bam. Alright, so my first term is done. Alright guys, so now we're going to do the same thing but with the 5. I'm going to start with the 5 and multiply it to all 3 terms. So let's get going. Alright guys, so 5 times x squared, there is secretly a 1 in front of this x squared. So 5 times 1 gives me a positive 5. And I don't have an x to combine to, so I'm just going to bring down this x, so it's 5x squared. Alright, 5 times negative 11x, so 5 times negative 11 gives me a negative 55. Holy hot dog, you guys. And I don't have anything to combine the x to, so it's just going to come down as x, which you can write it as x or x to the first. And finally, 5 times 6, well, we don't even have a variable to deal with in this one, which makes our lives infinitely easier. So 5 times 6 gives us a 30. And that is it with all the multiplying. So the 5 is donezo, you guys. Now, before we are finished with this problem, the next step, we must combine all like terms, starting with our highest exponent term, which is x to the 4th. So I'm going to see if there are any more terms that contain x to the 4th, which unfortunately there are not. X to the 4th is lonely and by itself, so I'm just going to drop it down. So we have x to the 4th. Alright, now I'm looking for terms with x to the 3rd. That is my next highest exponent. Remember, you guys, when we do this, we start with the highest exponent and we go down all the way down until we've reached the lowest exponent. So the goal is to try to go down by 1 each time, or if there's not one going down by 1 each time, just you start at the highest and then you go to the next highest. Okay, so negative 11 cubed, let's see if there are any more x cubed terms. Aw, shucks, there are not. So I'm just going to bring down my negative 11x cubed. Alright, now, my next highest exponent would be something to the second power, which I spot 2 of them. One right here and one right there. So when you guys add variables together, you do not touch the exponents. I know when we multiply, we add exponents, but do not touch the exponents when you add or subtract variables with exponents. That is when the demon cats will be coming for you. So I'm going to bring down the x squared before I'm tempted to even touch it at all. And all you guys have to do is add the numbers in front. So 6 plus 5 gives me 11, which is a positive number. So it'll be plus 11x squared. Okay, so now I go to the term with the next highest exponent, which is x to the first, which, since this one does not have an exponent, secretly there's a 1 there. Okay, I don't see any other terms with a 55x, so I'm just going to bring that bad boy on down. This one is sad and lonely and all by itself. So negative 55x. And finally, my last term is 30, which is the one that does not contain the x. That's the one we always write last, if there is one. And sadly, there's nothing to combine to this one either. Shucks. So I'm going to bring it on down. So plus 30. And that, my friend, would be your final answer. So this is the end of the problem. Bam! This one is donezo. Alright, you guys. In just a moment, we'll be expanding some polynomials, so get excited.